learn to improve conversions and generate more leads with the video podcast at marketingoptimization.tv. Hi, and welcome to Marketing Optimization with Alex Designs. I'm your host, Alex Harris, and today we're chatting with Kate Erickson. How you doing, Kate?
I'm great, Alex. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being here. Today we're going to be talking all about content marketing and specifically using your content to convert your leads into customers. To get started, what would be your number one tip to convert those leads into customers using content?
So my number one tip to convert leads into customers with your content would be to set up a nurture campaign of some sort that is really focused on like a big pain point that your audience has. Start at the very ground level with like that first piece of content to kind of get them in and get them opted in and start sending them continued content about that topic. Mm-hmm. And then that would lead into like a product or a service that you offer to help solve that pain point.
That is a great recommendation because me included, not many people think about the long-term consistency that it takes. How many touch points do you have to actually connect with your audience to really build up your brand to show your credibility to actually get them to actually convert? So do you put that into like a marketing calendar to set up your year?
Yeah, you could definitely do it through like a marketing calendar, mm-hmm. at which point, you would kind of have mapped out what all those pieces of content would look like, mm-hmm. and, the order that makes the most sense for that. So having like a content schedule is a really great way to do that on like individual tracks, because you could have certain pain points that you're trying mm-hmm. to help solve for your audience. So you could kind of have those on different tracks and be like putting them out at different times so that, you make sure that you're not clobbering your audience with tons of different types of content. You want it to flow smooth.
Yeah. I asked that because Kate's from the website entrepreneuronfire.com, which is a daily podcast that actually generates over $200,000 per month in revenue. Wow. It's incredible the pace that you guys have really gone through. And you've gotten really a compound effect almost every single month. Your nurture campaigns, your marketing calendar, and now your content in the blog. And that's really where you spend the most time is on the blog. How are you using the blog to really, talk to your audience in the right way?
Well, I think a big switch for me on the blog was when I kind of realized that I was putting out content and I was kind of guessing at first as to what the audience wanted to hear about. Right. I was taking cues from what the podcast was providing because obviously that was doing really well. Mm-hmm. And I kind of found that our audience on the blog was actually a lot different from our audience on the podcast. They were looking for a lot more for lack of a better way to describe it, like a hand-holding, step-by-step process for whatever I was talking about. So mm-hmm. whereas my content in the beginning was covering like overall general ideas about entrepreneurship, I found that once I started really breaking down like a step-by-step process for the content, that the posts were doing a lot better. So on the blog right now, I'm doing a lot of stuff that's kind of behind the scenes. I think people are really getting into kind of peeking behind the curtain. It makes them feel very involved in your business. I think it's really great for your branding to have your audience feel as though they're a part of your business rather than, on the opposite side of your business. Mm-hmm. And so by taking posts and really breaking down the things that John and I are doing and that are working really well for us, mm-hmm. that type of content is resonating really well with our audience.
I think that's a really good point that people should listen to because people want to know results. Everybody wants this magic solution, but there's a step process to really get to that solution. And you show proof in your income reports and your step process in your content. How are you actually, once you understand what is working, how are you optimizing that content? And do you have specific goals or KPIs that you're kind of tracking with your content marketing?
I'm trying to get a lot better about that. I'm glad that you brought that up because in the beginning I was kind of putting these posts out there and, was either disappointed or excited about the results, but I never really had it based on one single thing. And as you know, it's so important to have your goal set with your content. Why are you writing it? What are you looking for your audience to do? What action do you want them to take as a result of it? Mm-hmm. So in the beginning, I was doing a lot of tracking based on the engagement. My number one, goal when I first started the blog was engagement, because that told me that people were finding value in the content and that it was worth it for me to continue doing it. So in the very beginning, all I was doing is looking at the number of comments I was getting on a post. How good am I at getting people to read the entire thing? And then after having read it, actually start engaging with me about that content. And as I continued writing the blog and I kind of felt like I had a better sense of what people were looking for, what was more important to me is whether or not I'm able to get people to take an action at the end of it. And that no longer became, leaving me a comment, but it became signing up for an email campaign series that we might have going. So, making sure that I have a very specific goal set for every single piece of content, it's really difficult to do, especially when you put out a lot of content, because your web starts getting like really, really big and it can sometimes start to not make a whole lot of sense anymore. But I think it's really important in your content marketing strategy to take a step back and really try to look at that overall picture so that you know how different goals with different pieces of content are working with and for each other.
Yeah, because probably the podcast is where majority of people find you, but now with how much content on your blog you're really putting out, you're probably getting a lot of results in natural search as well. So your traffic, I'm sure, has gone up on the website, and now I see that you're optimizing how you're collecting leads on your website as well. I see you have you're trying different popovers, call to actions. Talk about how different ways that you're collecting email addresses throughout your blog.
So I'm sorry, did you say different ways that I'm collecting emails through the blog?
Yes.
Okay. So we started with we had an after post widget that we would use on our site that was basically the same as whatever was on our homepage. Sign up and get the top 12 resources from today's top entrepreneurs, for example, was like a resource that we were offering people on our homepage. And originally that was just an after post widget that we had on the blog as well. But now I'm really trying to start, being a lot more specific with the offer that we have for people to opt in after a post being more specifically related to the content on that actual post. So no longer are people going to kind of feel that disjointed, like say I'm talking about, email autoresponders in my post. And then somebody gets to the beginning and I'm like, hey, get your name and email here and you'll receive the top 12 resources from today's top entrepreneurs. Well, email marketing and email series aren't really related much to 12 resources from top entrepreneurs. It's a great resource, but what if I was able to offer them something at the end of that post that was directly related, maybe like a step 2 for that content that I just wrote about, and the conversions would be a lot higher in that case because it's directly related to the content that they just started reading, and it's going to take them to the next step after that. So they're much more likely to enter their name and email at that point.
Yeah, this is a great strategy, and we definitely hear Clay and Tim Page from Leadpage talk about this strategy, creating specific lead magnets or opt-in forms specifically related to the post that you're on. It only makes sense. A lot of times people aren't going to be able to read all your content right there at that time. So if they can take away either a PDF or something and opt in to get that, then you're going to accomplish, giving them content that they're going to take onto their own, computers, and also collect the email address along the way.
Yeah, definitely. And since you brought up Clay and Tim, also something that we've been testing a lot is using a lead box versus like an actual opt-in form. Well, I mean, the lead box is an opt-in form eventually, but that kind of like click a link and have a pop-up come up. And those lead boxes have also worked really well on our posts. Yeah,
actually, since I had Clay and Tim on my show, I've actually been optimizing my own blog as well, and that two-step opt-in process that they talk about and Pat Flynn talks about, it really has helped increase the frequency of my opt-ins, and I'm sure it has done for you as well.
Yeah.
Excellent. So now you've collected some email addresses. Let's talk about sending email. It seems that you have a great schedule going on with how you send your emails, and then you use trigger emails based on your upcoming workshops. Talk a little bit about how you do that and some of the tools that you use to accomplish that.
Yeah, so that's one example, like you said, is what we do with our webinars. So in our post sequence of our webinars, we'll send out an email and, we'll thank people for showing up who came to the webinar, and for people who didn't come to the webinar, offer them to sign up for our next live webinar. And so we're able to utilize like link click goals and Infusionsoft so that people don't have to go opt in over again to attend the next webinar. All they have to do is click a link saying, yes, I'm interested in attending the next webinar. And the Infusionsoft will tag them and automatically start them into our next webinar campaign. So that link click goal in Infusionsoft has been really huge for us, getting people who maybe weren't able to attend the webinar that they actually signed up for them to be able to attend the next webinar that we're doing. So that's, Infusionsoft is incredible. I believe you use Infusionsoft too, right?
Some of my clients do, but I don't particularly use it for my own. But you can do similar things with Aweber or Mailchimp. Maybe not as sophisticated as Infusionsoft, but there's a lot of different software that you can use to accomplish the same goals. But if you do want to know specifically about the funnel that Entrepreneur on Fire uses, you can actually check out John Lee Dumas's episode, the partner of Kate Erickson, and you can check that out at alexdesigns.com/18. So, as you're sending these emails, have you been testing different, subject lines to improve your open rates, and then also your click-through rates? Are you trying different things within the actual emails?
Yeah, definitely. And I have this written out on the blog. I did kind of like an email newsletter diary for us. And it was a series of 3 blog posts on the Entrepreneur on Fire blog, where I kind of started at square one, like this is what's going on with our emails right now, and we're really looking to improve it, because a lot of our conversion and our goals were based on open rates and click-throughs, what you've just mentioned.
Yeah.
And so, I did a lot of research. I looked to Pat Flynn. I looked to some of the other leaders in the industry who I know have really strong open rates and click-throughs and have a very engaged audience with their emails. And we started testing a ton. We were testing subject lines. We were testing the way the content actually showed up in the email, like whether we were including images or, a sidebar, or whether it was just plain text the entire way. And then we were also testing out the types of links that we were putting in our emails, because in the beginning we were doing kind of like roundup posts. And so we would have multiple links in an email. And we found that the actual click-through rate with multiple links was a lot lower than if we just had a single call to action, which is, pretty straight across the board. You want your audience to do one thing, and you shouldn't confuse them when it comes to like them doing that versus something else. So we really started testing those things, and we have been getting a lot better. I would say hands down, the number one thing that gets us the best results overall in our emails is our subject line. And subject lines are tough to come up with sometimes. You don't want to do something that's totally unrelated to the content in the email, because you don't want somebody opening up and then, thinking, okay, well, next time I see a subject line, it's not going to have anything to do with what they're talking about. So, that's kind of been a very long testing process, which we're still kind of tweaking always. We're always tweaking that to try to make it better. So.
Yeah, I've definitely, I send a lot of email for my clients, especially in the e-commerce space. And, those subject lines are really the only way to test to really improve your opens. And the call to actions are really the only way to test to improve getting people actually to your site. So there's multiple ways to continue to optimize your email in general. But I see those subject lines that come in. I can definitely tell that you're trying to make them, almost negative in a way, but reassuring that there's a positive message in the end. Definitely some great things you have going on there.
Thank you.
And aside from content and email, you're also doing a lot of advertising. Can you explain how you're using or paid advertising specifically?
Yeah, definitely. So we've been doing a ton of testing with Facebook ads because we were seeing some really great results. We wanted to make them better, of course, because as soon as we start doing something, we're always looking for ways to optimize that experience for both ourselves and for our users. So, how can we get our costs down with Facebook ads? Yeah. And how can we put it in front of the right people so that we're not, A, annoying people, and so B, we're actually helping people who do want to see it. So we've done a lot of testing with Facebook ads. We've put a lot of money into it to try to figure out the best ways to do it. And we've actually scaled back. We're going to be be doing our Facebook marketing. We have weekly webinars that we do, and we used to do Facebook advertising for every webinar. And now we've kind of scaled that back to one webinar per month, because what's happened is we've had such success with the Facebook ads in the beginning that we've grown a very large email list just from those Facebook ads themselves. And we continue to nurture that list. And so we're able to kind of keep touching those contacts so that now we're not having to keep going back to the, pool of people every single time. We can kind of nurture those relationships that we've already started. So this is actually the first week that we've ran Facebook ads for our next webinar coming up in well over a month. So we'll see how it goes. We usually do tend to get double the signups through Facebook that we do through organic, so that, and then we're able to convert about 50%, 50 and 50 on the webinar. So 50% of our buyers do usually come from Facebook. So it's definitely worth the money we're investing. It's just that continual, tweaking and testing, trying to find things that work best for our audience.
And have you considered other forms of paid advertising, like retargeting campaigns, or, maybe even Google pay-per-click or Bing?
Yeah, we've done remarketing campaigns before, but on a very brand awareness type of level. It was actually specifically for Podcasters Paradise that we did remarketing, though. And, I don't think that we really ran it enough to really take, solid results and, percentages from that to see like what it was converting. We ran it for a pretty short period of time. And, when John and I find something that works, we really like to focus in and improve that one thing instead of trying to have our hands in a ton of different pots. So we were doing the remarketing about the same time that we started the Facebook advertising. And because the Facebook advertising was so much easier to track, we kind of did away with the remarketing. But I think remarketing is a great idea. I think it's a great thing to test out. Yeah.
Well, you said definitely a key thing there, and I try to explain this to my clients, is once you find out what's actually working, go all in. You double down on it, and that's really where you'll get that compound effect. Because, why spend time on things trying to make them work when they're not working? Just spend on time on the things that are actually working, and you'll actually get a lot farther a lot faster, for sure. Okay, let's talk about specifically converting people during the webinars. When you're on the webinars, you're a team with John, you're managing the community and the chat rooms while he's actually giving the presentation, or a couple of those cases where you had to actually give the presentation here or there. But let's talk. I don't think enough people take advantage of webinars in general.
Yeah, I mean, webinars have been so powerful for us. I mean, for Podcasters Paradise alone, we have over 1,100 members in our community right now, and probably 80 to 90% of those all came on a live webinar. So the power of a live webinar for us is so huge. And I really think it's important for people to understand the impact of having that engagement in the chat room and on another, site where people are watching the webinar, how key that is, because I really do truly believe that engagement with the audience has no doubt converted sales for us on those webinars. I mean, you have John killing it with the webinar. He's providing great value. He's upbeat. He has a ton of energy. And to, kind of mimic that in the form of a chat room where people are engaging with each other, where I'm able to engage with them, they kind of feel like they're getting a piece of the Entrepreneur on Fire team. I'm answering questions the entire webinar in the chat room. I'm gathering questions and questions to send to John for the Q&A session. And, I really find that people feed off of that in the chat room. If there wasn't anybody there encouraging that engagement and kind of, helping it along, then, I don't know, maybe they would still be chatting with each other, but probably not to the same degree. I've been on a lot of live webinars where you don't have that opportunity to engage with the other people who are participating. And I kind of feel like something's missing, I just think it's so much more fun when not only are you able to meet other people who are online and interested in the same things as you. I see people connecting on Twitter and asking for each other's email addresses in the chat. That's priceless. I mean, you're meeting people who are interested in the exact same things that you are, who you can, kind of pair up with online, maybe become accountability partners or help support each other in, launching your own podcast or whatever it might be. So I think that engagement aspect on a webinar is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And the engagement allows you to actually collect, qualitative information about your audience. That way you can understand what those pains and problems are. particularly asking questions how to make their podcast better, how to make money from their podcast. And along the way, I'm sure there's consistency between a lot of those questions. And as more of those top questions pop up, you're probably addressing those in your membership site.
Absolutely. We have an entire FAQ on the membership site where we, tally up the most commonly asked questions, which of course get asked over and over again every single week.
Yep.
And that's been very valuable for the community. And I'll say too, we even have people who are already a part of the community who come back on our live webinars all the time, and they jump in the chat and they, authentically talk about what the community is doing for them. And that's really powerful for us, of course, because it's not me and John talking about our community. It's about our members talking about our community. Mm-hmm. And for somebody who might kind of be on the fence or isn't really sure what John and I are all about, that type of feedback from a third party, talking about how great the community is, that's really powerful for somebody who's in the stage of making a buying decision.
Yeah, you're really, John's showing his credibility and showing that you guys are real people, because people like to work with people that they like. So having, coming through that transparency, you guys are really building your brand and creating raving fans. I know I've became one. I certainly would be happy to promote any of your stuff, because not only do you have great products and services, you are great people. I've had the opportunity to hang out with you guys several times, and probably again in the future as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. Let's briefly tell people about some of the projects that you have coming out. You have potentially a podcast coming out. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that was kind of like next on my content marketing strategy. I kind of hit this roadblock, I guess you could say, where I felt like I was creating a lot of great content on the blog. I was, really improving my ability to write emails that were touching people and really affecting people and really helping people move forward in their business, which is, of course, our goal with our content. Mm-hmm. And, I kind of realized that I had so much content out there, but I didn't really feel like I was utilizing it to the fullest potential. And so, after talking to several people in my mastermind group and, kind of looking to people around me for support, I came up with the idea and have decided to go ahead with starting a podcast. And the podcast is going to be an audio blog. So I'm basically going to be repurposing my content and putting it out there through another medium, podcasting. And I'm really excited about that. Mm-hmm. I see what it's done for people in our community. I see what a podcast has done for our business. And I think adding another channel to offer up that content is going to be really strong for our strategy. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that does.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, people consume content in many different forms. Some people like the audio format, while they're driving to work or working on something else. Some people want to watch videos. Some people like to read. Me in particular, I actually don't read a lot of blogs. Half the time I highlight a whole blog and I have the computer read it to me. That's the majority of the time. That's actually how I'm reading most blogs, because I'm always working, honestly, and I don't have a lot of time. So I'm actually looking a lot forward to your podcast for sure.
Cool. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, before we close out, let's tell people specifically how they can find out more about the upcoming podcast and you in general.
Sure. So you can find out more about the podcast that I'm about to launch. It's actually going to be launching maybe before this goes live. So you can find out more about that at eofire.com/Kate's Take. And you can find out more about Entrepreneur on Fire and me and John in general at eofire.com.
Awesome. Kate, what would be one thing that you can tell the listeners to take their content marketing to the next level?
I would kind of go back to what I was talking about at the beginning of this episode. Take a step back and really look at all the content that you have out there, whether it be through your blog posts, through the emails that you're sending out, and really start to connect the dots of how that content is working together. Because you can put as many single pieces of content out there as you want, but unless they start connecting in some way, you're never really going to be leading your leads down into a, point where they could be converted into a customer. So I would really, even if you don't have anything that you're selling yet, maybe that's in the future for you. Just take a step back and look at how your content connects with each other and, what your goal is with each piece of content.
Yeah. And lastly, if you do want to know exactly how Entrepreneur on Fire makes over $200,000 in revenue per month, you can visit their website at eofire.com/income. And they break down everything that they do, their expenses, their results, and their revenue. Great case study right there.
Cool. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks for your time. Thank you for watching the Marketing Optimization Podcast with Alex Designs. Please remember to subscribe to all of the videos in my YouTube channel. Thank you.